Nathan Randall here with you again for Out of the Attic on 91 FM, and right now I'm talking with Vito Picone, Vito of the Elegance, and the Elegance big hit, of course, Little Star back in the late 50s. Vito, how's it going today?
Pretty good, Nathan. We've actually been pretty active this month with the way things have been in the economy and the situation. I thought things were going to slow down, but primarily we're starting to see a little more action, so feeling good about it.
And Vito, what got you interested in music, specifically the rock and roll and the Doo-Wop?
Well, I probably would have to go one step prior to that, and that would be the New York City Board of Education. They started a music program in 1954, I believe. We were actually in the probably 4th, 5th grade, or maybe a little later. And they told us that we were going to be playing instruments, and they passed out some instruments and handed me a trombone, and a couple of the other fellas that I started the first group with before the Elegance were trombone, the whole trombone section, with 3 of us from there and a young girl with a trumpet that sat next to us. And our love of music just started to grow from that point on. We did actually form a vocal group called the Crescents, Pat Cordell and the Crescents, and Pat was the trumpet player, and like I said, the 3 trombone players. We were only 13 years old. And we formed our first recording group, and actually had a record released. We had a record released in 1956, a song called "Darling Come Back," and it lasted only a year. The girl didn't want to travel, and she didn't want any part of that, and she split, and she went on to become one of the June Taylor dancers, which became the dancers for the Jackie Gleason show and all of those shows. And the rest of us decided we wanted to stay in the business, and we contacted a couple other fellows from the neighborhood, and we formed a group and called them the Elegance, and we started to audition live and got lucky at one of the record companies. They gave us the opportunity to make a record, and I co-wrote Little Star with one of the fellas, and Little Star was our first release as the Elegance, and within the first week alone it sold 80,000 copies in New York and went on to do close to 5 million as of today.
So, Vito, that was your experience before the Elegance actually formed, while you were in high school and middle school as well.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm older than you are, and the word middle school to us was foreign because there was no such thing as a middle school at that time. We went from kindergarten to the 8th grade. He graduated and then did 4 years of high school. So we actually stayed right until the 8th grade.
Now, the original Elegance group, did all of you guys attend school together?
Just 2 of us, the 2 fellas that remained from the first group. We went to school together. We lived maybe about 1 block away, a block and a half away from each other. And we are actually the ones that completely decided that that's what we wanted to do at a very early age. And we went to a section of my old neighborhood, which was, we were born and raised in South Beach in Staten Island, New York, which is probably, now it's at the base of the Verrazano Bridge. There was no Verrazano Bridge at the time. But at the base of the Verrazano Bridge was a boardwalk. That boardwalk ran about a mile. It was the Franklin Delano Roosevelt boardwalk. And at the foot of the boardwalk, and by the facing Coney Island from Staten Island, was South Beach. That particular beach had bungalows, all these bungalow colonies, and everybody used to come there for the summer. We eventually met Bobby Darin, whose family came there in the summer. Johnny Maestro's family came down from the summer from Manhattan, and we started to hang around this instead of street corners like most of the kids did in Brooklyn and New York. We all congregated on the boardwalk. And because of the tremendous influx of people coming in for the summers from Hoboken and Jersey City, the Bronx, all those kids that lived in that area at the time would wind up hanging around that particular part of the boardwalk. So we found in that crowd of 200 kids or whatever, 2 or 3 other guys that wanted to sing too, and we formed the original Elegance.
Who was your musical inspiration growing up?
Yeah, well, very strange. I mean, one of them would have been a school teacher prior to me really starting to listen to rock and roll as it was in its infancy. But I was a clown in school. I was always clowning around and got myself in a little jam. And for punishment, they put me into the Glee Club, and they thought that was going to be a punishment at the time. And by doing so, I actually met this West Indian teacher, a school teacher, who was the music teacher, who started to give me new ways to learn how to vocalize, and also showed me that harmony was a very intricate part of music. And that was the first influence outside of the business. Who I really admired as a singer, Sam Cooke would have to be number one. He was my biggest inspiration. And a fellow named James Shepard, who was the lead singer of a group called the Heartbeats, who their biggest record was a song called 1,000 Miles Away. And eventually we, coincidentally enough, wound up signing with the same label as the Heartbeats, and he became more of a mentor to me. But those were the two biggest influences in my life.
What was it like to be a part of the music scene in the late 50s after rock and roll had somewhat been established?
Well, the strangest thing was that it just happened so fast for us that we really never grasped the enormity of the success. We were just having such a great time. As I said, the song came out and was shot into the number one spot so fast. We literally were coming out of school, and the record was hit the number one spot, and then we were out on the road. It was a tremendous feeling, but we were looking for bragging rights in the neighborhood. We were just couldn't wait for the people in the neighborhood to hear the record on the radio, and then we could be proud of that. But it never known that it was going to go as far as it did and as big as it did. Little Star was international. It was one of the very few rock and roll songs that became an international hit in Italy, in Germany, in France, in Spain. And that was a tremendous, tremendous thing at that time. And again, as I said, it was in its infancy. White groups were just starting to surface into what was initially the R&B market, and we were the second white vocal group to have a number one record ever in history. The first was Danny and the Juniors with At the Hop, and they beat us by maybe about 4 months, I think. And we were breaking new ground every time we did something. We were given the title of the Italian American groups. Dion and the Belmonts and ourselves were the first two groups to actually break that market, and we would be the forerunners for the Italian American groups, which turned out to be in the early '60s 90% of the rock and roll groups that were coming out. You had the Capris, you had the Chimes, you had the Passions, you had the Duprees, you had the Four Seasons. All of these groups were coming later, and all of these groups were Italian American kids from various neighborhoods in the New York area. So it was a great thrill. Now to me it's an honor, but at that point it was just a thrill. We were having a great time.
And Vito, talking there, you mentioned your biggest hit, Little Star. Where did the idea for Little Star exactly come from?
There's a quote in the Hall of Fame, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, along with our display of Little Star, and I was quoted pretty justly by the facts were very simple. We were rehearsing, we were looking for new ideas so that we can actually compete in the rock and roll field as we knew it. We knew that we wanted to make a record, and we started to try all these different things. We kept going till about close to midnight, and it was time for us to break up and go home. And we were getting silly. We were overtired, and after we had tried this idea and that idea, we started, screwing around with nursery rhymes, Little Jack Horner and Mary Had a Little Lamb, and we were clowning around. And then we did Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and all of a sudden there was a little something different with that, and we thought that we might have hit on something. So we decided to go home because it was kind of late. We were at one person's house, one of the kids' house, and the parents were giving us the evil eye, get out, time to go to bed, get out. But we went home, and on the way home, as I was walking, I had told Artie Venosa, who was one of the fellows in the group, I says, when you get up in the morning, I says, give me a holler. I says, then we'll sit down and see if we can come up with some kind of idea. And that's what we did. And we sat down, and within 20 minutes we had 90% of Little Star written, and the way it was actually recorded.